Good evening and welcome to this live webinar. Joining me for this, and you haven't seen the workouts, you may want to give those a go. Drop them a quick message. It's supposed to be streaming, but the kind of process presentation, kind of be able to see that. Any comments on Facebook? What I've got to say, and we'll go from. To see a PowerPoint presentation going on, so please don't take everything I talk is based on my own kind of experience when it comes to nutrition and running. I've been running for sort of 20 plus years, and hopefully I've picked up a few things over that period of time. There are good and bad diets. I mean, there's loads of information out there. I mean, if you go online, or some of you have probably been to experts before, and you know, there's just tons of information, and there's so many diets out there. Some are good, some not so good. But I think one of the key things is that we're not all the same, and that's something to kind of take into consideration. And you know, you could get the best advice in the world, but what works for you may not quite work for someone else. Obviously, there is, you know, this kind of underlying principle, if you like, with diet. So we know, for example, really that, you know, sweets are bad and vegetables are good, that type of thing. So there is an element of sort of common sense. But I think when it comes to kind of diet, it's important that there's kind of an element of trial and error. You know, you're really going to have to try things for yourself, see what works for you, and try and find the right formula. I'm going to try and give you a bit of a runner's insight into what I do and how that works for me. And you may find that works for you. You may find that it needs a little bit of tweaking, you know, so customize it for yourself. But, you know, play with it, have a little try, see what works for you, see what doesn't, and, you know, you'll get there in the end. Something else that's important to consider is that a runner's diet is, you know, it's not the same as a diet for losing weight, or a healthy diet as such. So that's something to consider. If you are you've started running because you want to lose weight, then, you know, a runner's diet's not necessarily right for you. And I'll kind of explain the reasons why as I go through the presentation. But kind of in a nutshell, you know, carbs are the main fuel for runners, and you know, in order to you know, start burning fat, you need to have you know, depleted your carb store. So if you're getting a lot of carbs in your diet, which a lot of runners will, then you won't necessarily be losing weight. So that's just something to consider as well. So when it comes to fueling your body, there are three main types of fuels that your body will burn off when you run. First and foremost, we have sugar. This doesn't last particularly long, but it's the first thing your body uses to fuel. And what, you know, you probably see is that, you know, at some races you might see someone scoffing a chocolate bar before a race, or down an energy drink, something like that, to kind of give them a bit of an energy boost. I personally don't do that. I can see why people would do that, but I don't. I tend to get most of my sugar kind of through natural stores, so through like fruit, bananas, things like that. That's where I tend to get my kind of sugar from. I may be a bit naughty and have a post-race flapjack, just to kind of you know, get a bit of sugar back into the body after like a hard, tough race. But mostly, you know, I wouldn't be eating kind of sweets and chocolate, and I don't particularly agree with energy drinks as such. I'll talk a bit more about that later, but you know, I feel sluggish if I put that kind of sugar in my body before a race. So yeah, it's kind of each to their own. You may find that works for you, having a bit of chocolate before a race, or having an energy drink. You know, an energy drink is something that I've had before a race when it was a marathon. I think that's a little bit different when you need more carbs in there and things like that. So it kind of, you know, you can work it depending on what kind of running that you're doing, but for the majority of races, you know, I wouldn't be having anything like that kind of before a race. Mentally as well, I don't feel good if I'm going out running. I run to feel good. I don't want to feel like, oh, I've just eaten some chocolate or whatever. So for me in the morning it might be a bit of banana and a slice of toast, something like that before a race. But I wouldn't be having that kind of sugar. So yeah, I get most of my sugar through kind of natural sources. On the side kind of says like good and bad sugar. My good sugar is kind of like natural, so I'll get lots of fruit and stuff. If I do, I'm feeling a bit of a sweet tooth, I might have honey, so I'll put some honey kind of in my cereal and things like that. If you sort of like drinking tea, which I don't, better to put in a drop of honey if you like, it's sweet as opposed to sugar. Otherwise, even honey, you don't have to have. And I guess the key thing is really just to kind of cut out the bad sugars. You don't want to be eating sweets and chocolate and things like that all the time. I know it's kind of common sense, but we get into bad habits. You want to be sort of like cutting that sort of thing out. So try and get your sugar element from natural stores. Moving on to carbohydrates or carbs. These are like your main source of fuel when you're running, and this is like your petrol. So again, there are good and bad carbs. So if you go into the shop, if you pick something up and it says 36 grams carbs, 36 grams of which sugars, put it back. You don't want that. Just put it back. Okay, so that's probably something rubbish. That's probably, that could be a cake or chocolate bar or whatever. So kind of carbs or bad carbs and sugar kind of, they almost go hand in hand, because bad carbs basically turns into glucose, which is kind of like sugar. So basically bad carbs are a no-no. And your good carbs are kind of like your whole wheat spaghetti, your whole wheat pasta, your wholemeal bread and things like that. So they are important to have in your diet as a runner. But kind of going back to when I was talking about, if you're running to lose weight, the quickest way to kind of lose weight is on a low carb diet. So, I mean, you should all want to kind of try and cut out the bad carbs. But if you're a runner, you would keep the good carbs in, or at least if you was running regularly. And if you was trying to lose weight, you would go on a low carb diet. The reason being for that is, as you can probably see from the slide, is that fat is the third fuel that our body burns. So you want to be cutting out the good carbs as well, because if you're eating carbs and then you're running, you're burning off the carbs, you're not actually burning the fat off. It takes a little while to get through to that kind of fat stage. So if you want to be burning fat and losing weight from running, it's kind of good to go on a low carb diet. A low carb diet is actually quite good anyway, just in terms of health reasons. Carbs can make you, even good carbs can make you feel a little bit sluggish, a bit tired and things like that. I was recommended by a nutritionist to try and cut carbohydrates out of my diet a little bit. But obviously, because I was running, I said, well, I can't really do that. And he's like, well, just, take them off on the days that you're running, for example. So I tried that, and literally after a day, I couldn't run. It was awful. I thought it'd be like a long process, but it literally happened after a day of not eating any carbs, because I have quite a lot of carbs in my daily diet. The next training session, I was doing 400s with my training group, and literally I was dying after 200 meters, and I couldn't keep up. And that was really unlike me, so I knew exactly what it was. It was the cutting out of the carbs. Now, actually, I did actually feel better during the day. I felt a little bit more alert, a little bit more awake, not getting so tired. But you've got to kind of compromise a little bit as a runner. If you're training hard, you're working hard, you need to be kind of getting those good carbs in there. So if you're only like running, say, 2 or 3 times a week, you may say, actually, I'm not going to carb every day, but I'm just going to have, a bit of a carb for my running. I would say, probably have your carbs the day before, as opposed to on the day like I was doing, because it was too late once I'd run and then got the carbs in. So you kind of want to be doing that beforehand, I think. But if you're like me and you run like 6-7 days a week, you'll probably be getting carbs in quite regularly. But that doesn't mean you can't still have a healthy diet. You can still have healthy around that. I still feel good. I know I'm going to burn most of those carbs off, so it's not so bad. What you don't want to be is in a position where you're having lots of carbs and you're not burning it off, because one, you're not going to feel as good, you're not going to feel as healthy. But particularly if you're taking up running to lose weight, you won't actually be burning any fat off, because you're still trying to burn those carbs off. So you will want to get rid of those carbs. The only sort of downside from that is that you will then be in a position where if you are running you're not necessarily going to feel great like I did. So when I cut out the carbs, I wasn't feeling particularly great. I couldn't put all the effort in, and so I couldn't do it. So I needed those carbs. But you may find, okay, if your goal is to try and lose weight, then actually running quick times and running hard isn't necessarily going to bother you. So even though you may not feel kind of as fueled when you run, you know that you're losing weight and you're not going for a time, so it's not a massive issue, and you know you're going to feel great around it. Or you may decide, actually, I'm just going to keep in a small amount of carbs just to kind of help with my running, but most of the time I'll try and cut them out, and that's going to help me lose weight. So yeah, carbs are best fuel for runners, but you want the good carbs like your whole meals and your whole wheats, that sort of thing. Keep those in there, but if you want a kind of healthy diet, maybe try and cut them out a little bit. And if you want to lose weight, then you want to go on a low carb diet basically. But another thing when it comes to kind of losing weight, and I know this is going slightly off topic, but resistance training actually helps lose weight quicker. So if you are running to lose weight, maybe incorporate some strength and conditioning into your plan as well as good eating habits, and that can definitely help you. So then moving on to fat, as we've just discussed, this is the last one, the last fuel the body burns, and if you want to get onto that, you kind of need to get rid of the carbs. But if you're like me, super skinny, do loads and loads of running, you need those carbs. You don't necessarily want to be burning any fat off. But like with everything else, there's good fats and there's bad fats. Please don't neglect your good fats. There are a lot of people that just try to cut out all fat because they think it's not good for you. That's not necessarily the case. Even good fat in large quantities, yes, it's not the best thing in the world, but you do need to be getting in small amounts of good fat into your diet. So that's definitely something to consider. You'll get bad fats in your cakes and like you will with everything else, but good fat, that's kind of like from your dairy kind of products. So what I don't agree with is things like, this butter is 100% less fat, let's get that one. Don't get it. Basically because if they're taking all the fat out, then they're just putting other rubbish in there. And secondly, it means you're not getting any of your good fats, and your body needs that. So if you get all these dairy products with literally 100% no fat, you're not getting any good fat into your body, and that's not good for you. So my recommendation is yes, try and keep your fat level down fairly low. But if you're going to have some of these dairy products in your life, so like cheese, for example, make sure it's full fat cheese, not low fat cheese. And don't be getting skimmed milk. Semi-skimmed milk is a good alternative, but you need some of that good fat, okay? So you don't want to be cutting that out. What I sometimes have is like with my pudding, I'll have some Yeo Valley yogurt with some fruit. That's great. There's some good fat in there, and that's good. And I buy Lurpak butter. That's one of the best butters out there. Just don't try and go for all this low fat stuff, low fat yogurt, all this sort of thing. It's just cutting out your good fat, and you don't want that. So try and keep that in there, but majority of the time you just want to be cutting out the bad fat, okay? And then maybe with your good fat, just sort of keeping it within a kind of reasonable level. Okay, so they're your kind of three main body fuels that we've covered. Hopefully there's been a bit of information there for you that you might not have known before. Some of it is common sense, so you probably did, but just a few things to consider, like the good fat thing. People don't realise actually that there are good fats that your body needs, so try not to kind of cut those out. So here's a kind of example of a daily meal plan for me. It's kind of basic, there's nothing crazy on there. You can kind of customize these things and add in all the extra bits and bobs, but for a good kind of runner's diet, and obviously bearing in mind that I do eat meat and things like that. So this is kind of a basic one for me. So for breakfast I'll have porridge. I'll have this with some blueberries, and if I'm feeling like I want it a bit sweet, I might add in a bit of honey there because it's natural sugar, and that's a lovely little breakfast you can have there. Sometimes I might have a bit of banana with it if I've got like a big run on that day, or I might have that kind of as part of a smoothie, which I'll come on to in a minute. For lunch, I quite often have eggs, sort of for the protein and obviously the good fat as well. So I might have an omelette with some avocado and some salad, so you're getting some protein there, you're getting some nutrients and stuff as well. So that's a really good kind of sort of healthy lunch to have. Sometimes I might have that with sort of like whole wheat bread. Sort of, again, if I've got a bigger run on that day and I want a bit more carb in there, I will do that. But otherwise, just sort of like omelette and avocado. For dinner, one of my sort of weekly meals is spaghetti bolognese. Obviously, I'll have this with kind of whole wheat sort of spaghetti, and I sort of cram it full with the sort of regular sort of vegetables you would get. Sometimes it'll be a little bit more kind of exciting and slap something else in there. But that's quite a kind of healthy meal, particularly if it's homemade. If you've got the time to kind of homemade these things, it's much healthier. And what I'll do is, I know a lot of people like having bread. Sometimes I will, again, if I want to kind of double load with the carbs, but quite often I'll actually just have a bit of halloumi with it, which kind of complements it quite nice. But that also, it gives you just that little dose of kind of good fat. And then for pudding, a regular thing that I will have is kind of yogurt. Obviously, I'll go for whole fat, so I have like Yeo Valley, something like that, and I'll have that with fruit, apple and grapes, something I have quite often with my yogurt. Sometimes I'll have blueberries and other things like that. And then throughout the day, if I want to kind of snack, fruit and nuts, so natural sugar, nuts are quite good for protein and things like that. And carrots and hummus is another one. That's quite a healthy snack, and one that I really enjoy. So if you feel like having a nibble throughout the day, when you're not, you're feeling a bit peckish and you don't want to eat anything too rubbish, there's two kind of good options there. There's a few kind of things with this whole kind of like, do we eat big or do we eat little and often? To be honest, because the amount of running that I do have 3 big meals a day, and then I kind of snack around those. You may find little and often works better for you. It kind of depends on what your goals are. I do a lot of running, so I kind of need 3 biggish meals, and then I kind of try to make sure that my snacks in and around that are kind of relatively healthy and nothing kind of too filling. And then obviously bearing in mind, if you've got a big race the next day, you might not want an excessive meal. And obviously if you're marathon training, you may add in more carbs into your kind of daily thing, and kind of things like that are worth considering. Another kind of diet that I know some of the top runners do, those that run in like sort of 100 plus miles a week, is actually the 100-mile diet, which is basically where you can just eat anything because you kind of know you're going to burn it off. That kind of does work in a way, but then at the same time, I think you still want to be kind of considering having a bit of a healthy diet or healthier diet. But at the end of the day, you just want a kind of a good balanced diet, and my kind of emphasis, if I can get it out there, is to have a balanced diet, but be on the good side of a balanced diet. Don't sort of neglect having the odd chocolate bar here and there if you want to kind of reward yourself. There's nothing wrong with kind of saying, I've had a really good healthy week, I'll have a bit of a chocolate bar and things like that. It's actually kind of, there is evidence to suggest that actually chocolate in small quantities can be good for you. So, I would say there's nothing wrong with having a little bit of chocolate now and again. But just try and get a nice kind of reasonably healthy-ish diet, and then you know then that you can kind of reward yourself around that. And again, if you're a runner, having the odd pizza once a week or every other week, you're going to burn it off. It's not a massive issue, but just try and make sure you're including all your nutrients and things like that, and you should do well. So that's kind of a bit of a daily meal plan for me. Obviously I'll have other meals and things like that, but that's just one that from last week that I had that kind of works for me. So drinking, I just kind of really drink water. I don't drink too much else. I try to have 2 litres a day. That might sound like quite a lot, but you want to keep hydrated. You shouldn't be getting to the point where you feel thirsty. If you feel thirsty, that means you're already dehydrated. So just try and keep on top of your water. There's some good apps out there where it'll go make a drip sound every 15-20 minutes just to remind you to have a swig of water if you carry a bottle or something like that. That's quite a good one to do. And sometimes if I've had a hard workout or a hard session, I may have a kind of homemade sort of smoothie with sort of banana, peanut butter and oats and milk, and that goes down quite nice as well. So you can see there it's quite a balanced diet. It's reasonably healthy. I've got some good fats in there and some good carbs, and that works for me. One thing you will want to consider is protein. Now, protein is obviously not a fuel that we burn off, but it plays an important part in sort of muscle recovery and sort of rejuvenating the body. So I will get quite a bit of protein from my meat, and not from a fist but fish. That's obviously a spelling mistake there, but yeah, that's I do eat meat, so I can get my protein from there. I think as well, you can get protein from sort of like eggs and dairy products, milk and things like that, and obviously there's protein shakes as well. I'll talk a little bit more about kind of protein shakes in a minute, as to whether I do or don't have them or not. But yeah, no, I get most of my protein from meat and things like that. I kind of recommend that actually, if you do eat fish and meat, that actually having oily fish twice a week is very beneficial for you, because of that kind of vitamin D element. And I'll actually come on to that a bit later on with some tips as to why and how we're not getting so much vitamin D in this sort of country. But also somewhere where I get a lot of protein from is actually tuna. You can have a tin of tuna like post race or post session, or have some tuna as part of a meal, so like a tuna pasta bake or something like that, with maybe some salad or some spinach or kale or something like that, would be quite nice. But tuna is basically almost like 100% protein, and there's nothing else in it, so you're just getting a good load of protein, and you're not getting any other kind of rubbish, which you might get if you have like a protein shake and that sort of thing. So post race sometimes I will do that. And also, I would go, if I get a tin of tuna, I'll get it sort of in spring water and not oil and things like that. So that's just another thing to consider as well. Obviously, there'll be a lot of you out there that don't eat meat and fish and necessarily dairy products and things, but there are other sources to kind of get your protein. Obviously, don't hold me to this 100% because I do eat meat. But I know, for example, like even vegetables, fruits and nuts are good sources of protein. I mean, nuts have quite a lot of protein in, and vegetables and fruit do as well. But obviously you can trial and error with what fruit and vegetable works for you. But also some fruit and vegetables have more protein than others, so that's something worth considering. Have you got seitan, tofu, other good options there. Seitan's kind of like a meat substitute, and lentils. Lentils are brilliant. I love lentils. I incorporate these into my diet anyway, as I think you should do. And there's other things on there like chickpeas and beans, another good source of protein. Nothing wrong getting those in your diet. Quinoa is a good one, and kale and spinach. You get quite a bit of protein in there as well. So there's some options, if you don't have meat and things like that, to kind of incorporate into your diet. But there's no reason why, if you do eat meat, that you can't still incorporate those things into your diet as well, because some of them are quite healthy for you with the nutritional elements as well. So please do bear that in mind. So when it comes to kind of eating pre and post run, obviously I didn't have anything on my kind of daily plan, but sometimes if I'm not snacking in around those meals, if I've got a big run on that day, I may have a pre-run snack or a post-run snack. And here's just a couple of things that I've kind of added in there. Whole wheat bagel with peanut butter. That tastes really good, so I like that. I sometimes have that kind of pre-run or post-run. You're getting that sort of like good carb in there, a little bit of sugar from the peanut butter, but also the protein as well. Crumpets with jam. I wouldn't advocate these all the time, but sometimes when I have a long run, I might have a couple of crumpets and slap a bit of jam on there. Obviously, jam isn't something that I overly advocate just because it's kind of full of sugar. But if you're going on a big long run, like a 14-mile run, like I did last Sunday, a little slap of jam just beforehand, not a massive issue, because I know I'm going to burn it off. And I know that might sound a little bit contradictory, because I said earlier on, I wouldn't have any kind of sugar before a run, like bad sugar. But I think it's different if you're racing as opposed to you're just going out running on your own. If I was running a race, I'd want to feel good. I wouldn't want to feel sluggish. I'd want to feel alert. But if I'm just going out for a long run on my own, when I know where my time doesn't matter so much and my pace doesn't matter so much, and my goals for the run, are different from what they would be if I was racing, then having a little bit of a kind of sugar impetus beforehand, like with the jam, isn't such a massive deal to me. So then I might do it. So you may feel that kind of works for you if you want to fuel. Some people don't like eating before a run, and that's absolutely fine. I will sometimes eat pre-run, but it'll be small, or I'll make sure that I've eaten, say, an hour and a half to 2 hours before, because I don't like feeling like I've got a full stomach, and I know a lot of people don't. I think if you do like to eat, if you're going running early, it's quite difficult because you don't want to be getting up like 2 hours beforehand, to eat. So it can be, quite difficult. So just see what works for you. As I said, it's trial and error. I like to have a little pre-snack or eat something before I go, but make sure it's, there's a bit of a gap in between. And then obviously, like post-run, as I mentioned before, with the tuna, I'll have just like a pot of tuna. Sometimes I might even get like a little pot of milk from stop off at the shop and have a bit of that, just because, again, a little bit of protein. Banana's a good one, pre and post, because it gives you a bit of carbs back, but it also, you've got that natural sugar, so it can work as a good tool before a run. I sometimes have like a banana with my breakfast or as part of a shake. That's something you can have, and obviously, after races, you're always given a banana because it is a good source of sugar and carbs. So, and another one like flapjack, I mentioned it earlier. Sometimes I buy them from the shop, which is a bit naughty. But homemade flapjack is the good way to go. If you do like having a little bit of sweetness kind of in your diet, and you want to kind of get it back post run, you can kind of like make your own kind of homemade sort of flapjacks or other alternatives, because it's not the most unhealthy snack in the world, of flapjack, and particularly if you make it at home, you can make sure it's quite a sort of like a healthy-ish one with just like a small amount of sugar. Maybe use honey instead of like caster sugar and things like that. You don't want that kind of sugar in there. But they're just a few things that I might consider pre and post run. You may find they'll actually work for you, and I'll try that. Like the idea with the tuna. But you may find actually other things work for you. So have a little play with it and see what you think. So coming on to protein shakes, I kind of mentioned this already. I don't really have protein shakes because I have tins of tuna, and if I go for a long run, then I have a tin of tuna. What do I need a protein shake for? And with a protein shake, you probably get in as much protein in the tin of tuna as you would in a protein shake. So why not? I guess obviously if you don't like tuna, then then a protein shake's probably a good idea. But if you do, then you may want to consider having the tuna instead, because in a protein shake, okay, yes, there's like 20-30 grams of protein in there, but at the same time there's loads of other rubbish in there as well. So there are ways of getting around not having a protein shake, but you may still want to keep them in your diet. I sometimes use them if I'm feeling kind of extra like fatigued or sore, and I feel like I need a bit of a protein boost, and I don't feel like some tuna, or I've already had some tuna but I want a bit more. I may sort of make a protein shake. If you kind of want to get these kind of into your system a little bit quicker, have them with water. It doesn't taste as nice as when you have it with milk, because it's more of a milkshake, but if you mix it with water, it gets into your bloodstream quicker and then into your muscles quicker. Milk's a lot longer to kind of break down and absorb, so that's more kind of like an overnight thing. If you have it protein shake with milk, it kind of takes effect overnight and you'll feel it more the next day, whereas with water it kind of goes straight into the bloodstream, straight into your muscles, and the protein starts taking effect quite quickly. What I might do if I try and add it into my diet, I mentioned earlier that I have a kind of banana and peanut butter smoothie with some oats. What I might do is, if I've got a chocolate flavoured one, I wouldn't do it with strawberry, but if I had a chocolate flavoured kind of protein shake, or the powder should I say, I'd put a dollop of that in there as well, mix it up, and then you're getting a bit of extra protein in there, and it's still sort of part of a healthy smoothie, if you like. If you do feel like you need that extra protein, then yes, you can have a protein shake. I'm not going against protein shakes, there's nothing wrong with them, but I'm just saying that if you want to you're having them just for the protein element, there are better alternatives out there, such as a tin of tuna, because it's just pure protein and nothing else, no rubbish. Okay, so that's definitely something to consider as well. Food supplements. So I get asked a few questions about these kind of things. So personally, most food supplements and most kind of tablets and things, and whether they be paracetamol and whatever, I tend to try not to take them unless I desperately need to. I don't kind of agree with putting all these kind of things in your body, and in most cases you can get this kind of stuff from your diet, from natural sources. You don't need to be taking pills and tablets. So that's something to consider. If you get your diet right, you don't need that stuff. Okay. Two things I do take, and just because of all the running and the pounding I do out on the road, I take cod liver oil. I get the capsules. These are good for your bones and your joints. And obviously there's glucosamine sulfate as well. I take that because that's really good for cartilage. So a few years ago I used to have some problems with my back. I started taking this and now my back feels great. And also there's like all the pounding I do every day on my knees when I go out on the road. Obviously you can run on the grass, and in a way running on the grass is good because there's less pounding on your joints, but also you're getting that extra kind of stability and ankle work with your ankles because the ground's normally a bit more uneven and slightly different terrain. So for training purposes, actually training on grass is quite good, but obviously if you're going for times and speed work and things like that, you may be out on the road somewhere a bit flatter, so there will be some kind of pounding on your joints, and particularly if you're marathon training and things like that, you probably start feeling a bit sorry for your knees. So glucosamine sulfate is a good one. It's part of the sort of the building blocks for building cartilage, so it helps them regrow, regenerate. So they are two things I do advocate if you're doing a lot of running. Multivitamins, only consider these as a fail-safe, and the reason I say that is because you can get these through your diet. If you're getting the right fruit, the right veg, and all the rest of it, you don't need to be taking multivitamins, because one, you'll be taking too much, and two, you're on a nice healthy diet. You don't need to. When I might take one, and only time I do, is if I have a day where, say for example, we have family film night on a Friday, we eat pizza, chips and beans because that's what the kids love, and then we might have some sweeties afterwards. So my kind of diet goes out a little bit out the window on a Friday. So what I might do is I might take a multivitamin tablet on that day, just because I know I haven't really got it much from anywhere else. So it's a bit of a fail-safe. So that's the only reason I would take multivitamins as a fail-safe. If you feel like you've not been getting it into your diet, then maybe take one. But at the same time, if you're eating the right food and you're getting these things into your diet, then you don't really need to be taking multivitamin tablets. So that's definitely something worth considering. What else? So odorless garlic, I do take this sometimes. This is a bit of an old wives' tale. My nan always used to say to me, "Oh, you won't get sort of like a cold if you take this." So I do take odorless garlic tablets. And touch wood, I've not actually been ill since, so it obviously seems to be working. But again, it's the same. If you're getting the right food, the right diet, getting plenty of vitamin C and things like that. There's plenty of vitamin C in different food sources, oranges, things like that, as you know. So you can work around it. You can sort of keep on top of these illnesses by eating right and not needing all these tablets. So as I say, they're there. For me, they're a bit more of a fail-safe, apart from the top two, because all the running I do, I feel I need those, and you may actually feel, if you're struggling with your knees a little bit or your back or whatever, that they might be two good options for you as well. But when it comes to multivitamins and other things like that, they're a fail-safe. If you're eating right, you don't need them. So we're moving on to hydration now. So for me personally, I drink water. I drink 2 litres of it a day, as I mentioned earlier. I may drink 3 litres if I'm racing the day after, just to make sure that I know I'm nicely hydrated. It's not always easy to get in as much as you sort of want to in a daily basis, but I think you've got to sort of set your goal, set your bar, and for me it's 2 litres, so I try and get in as much of that as I can. The best way to drink this, I believe, is filtered and at room temperature. Drinking cold water is not always that great for you. It's still water and it's still good, but there are reasons for that. But for me, it's kind of, if you've got a water filter, buy your kettle or whatever, put some water in there, let it filter, let it sort of go to room temperature, and then you can drink it like that. That's quite a good way of doing it. So that's how I drink my water, and that works for me. So but I know what it's like after a run and you're feeling hot and you want some cold water, but one of the best ways to get it in your system, get it in your system quick, is room temperature, and that's quite good for you. Something else I drink is milk. I don't sort of like down it every day, but now and again I may have a glass of milk. There is protein in there, and obviously it's a good fat as well, so there's nothing wrong with having a little bit of milk now and again. And obviously I have it with my porridge. I'll have it if I have a smoothie. So that's when I would normally have it. But sometimes I just fancy a glass of milk, and there's nothing too much wrong with having that in there. Some of you may sort of drink like tea and coffee and things like that. I don't. Caffeine, doesn't particularly agree with me, and it's not something that I love sort of shoving into my body. Obviously, you can get decaf and things like that and whatnot, but you are kind of drinking water, so you are kind of still getting that water into your body. But you may find that actually, if you cut tea and coffee out, you may find a little bit better. You may find you don't. So again, trial and error. If you want to sort of like include tea and coffee in there, and as I said, if you've got a bit of a sweet tooth, put honey in, don't put sugar in. But yeah, and then moving on to like energy drinks. I don't actually drink energy drinks per se. There's just a lot of crap in there, so I kind of tend to stay away from them unless I'm doing a marathon. I will have one before a marathon, and I will train doing my long runs up to a marathon as having one before as well. I tend to just drink water throughout the race, but if I was going to have a kind of energy drink during a race, I would train that way as well. One thing you should never do is something that you've not done before on race day. So I've known people that have made mistakes where they've not trained drinking energy drinks, but then they've done a marathon and they've grabbed an energy drink as they're running round, put that in their mouth, and actually next thing you know, your body's struggling to deal with it because your body's already working hard, running hard. It's then got to deal with this energy drink that's coming in that your body's not used to putting in when you're running at that kind of pace. So that's definitely something to consider. Train as you race, and race as you train. So there is another thing called carb swilling. I don't know if you've heard of this, but if you don't want to kind of put an energy drink into your sort of like your body while you're racing and things like that, if there's one on a stand, what you can do is grab it, put it in your mouth, swill it around, and then spit it out. And what that does is your body then sort of sends to your brain through the nerves kind of message to say that carbs are going to be coming into your body. So then your body kind of secretes some kind of hormone that kind of then gives you a bit of a kind of like energy boost type of thing. So it's kind of like tricking your body really into thinking it's getting carbs, but then your body still releases those hormones that it would do as if you was taking carbs in, which will then help you. So that's not something I kind of really do personally, but that is just something to consider that you can do, and maybe worth looking at if you want to sort of Google carb swilling afterwards. You may find that can work for you too. But for me, as I say, don't really have energy drinks, not from the shop anyway. I make my own made ones, and I think these are fantastic. You don't need anything else. So a homemade energy drink is a third of orange juice, so you're getting your sugar and everything from that. 2/3 water, that's the kind of the right amount to break that orange juice down because it's kind of concentrated, and for it to get into your body quick and stuff, you need to dilute it down, and obviously you need the water for the hydration anyway, but they're the right sort of quantities there. A third orange juice, 2/3 water, perfect sports drink, and then just add in a pinch of salt because obviously when you're running or you're working out, you are going to sweat and you are going to lose salt. You don't need loads of it. This is literally just a pinch, but then that will sort you out. So you're getting your hydration, you're getting a bit of sugar in, and you're replenishing your salt stores as well. So that is a perfect homemade energy drink. You don't need Lucozade and everything else, unless of course you want to, and that works for you, and that's absolutely fine. As I say, I use them, but only when I'm doing marathons. But for everything else, homemade energy drink, I really think it's the way to go. So try that, see what you think. Again, you may not think it works for you, but you may think actually this is a great way and slightly cheaper. I use them all the time, and I think they're fantastic. So have a go at making your own homemade energy drink. If there's one thing I think you could take from today is to give that a go. So do try that. So just kind of getting towards the end now. What I'll do is I'll just kind of go through some tips that I can kind of give you. And just kind of sort of at the same time sort of recapping what we've kind of been over. So in terms of diet, you basically want to be sort of cutting out this bad sugar, cutting out the bad carbs. So anything you pick up that says the same amount of sugar as carbs, then just absolute no. Get rid of all that stuff. Obviously, as I've mentioned, you can treat yourself again, but within reason. Let's try and get into good habits. Okay, so try and cut out all the sugar, the carbs, the sweets, the crisps, and the chocolate, and all that as much as you can. And that that definitely will make you feel a lot healthier and a lot better as well. So good carbs, obviously we want to keep them in if we're running. If you're running like all the time like me, that may be on a daily basis. If you're only running a couple of times a week, you may feel like, actually, I'd like to cut my carbs down a little bit, just so I can feel a bit healthier and a bit more alert and a bit more fresh. But at the same time, you're probably still going to need some in there if you are running as your sort of source of fuel. But then again, going back to the start, if you're running to lose weight, you may want to go on a low carb diet, so you burn off more fat. But then at the same time, bear in mind you might not feel as great when you're running because you've got no carbs in there. Limit processed foods as much as you can. Processed foods aren't great. A word to the wise, like even bread comes under processed food. Not a lot of people know that, but bread is processed food. So like the bread you buy in the shops, that is processed. There is better bread out there, and you can home make bread. There's no reason why you can't make bread from home. Give that a go. A lot of you probably got a bit more time off now, and I know I've seen a lot of people making bread, and I think it's great. So give that a go. I've done that before. It tastes great as well, and it's a bit healthier for you too. So that's just something to consider. Obviously, bread's not the end of the world. With processed food, I'm thinking more like tin stuff and that not so good stuff. So yeah, try and limit that down. Go organic where you can. This is not the be all and end all, and I know it's a little bit more expensive, so this isn't something you have to do, but organic is better. So if you can afford to, then maybe try and get organic food into your diet. I mentioned the oily fish twice a week, or at least I think I did. If you should be doing this because vitamin D, and I said I would come to this a bit later on, vitamin D is something that is important to be getting into your daily diet. Or sort of into your weekly diet, should I say, and oily fish is a good way to get that, and you should be having that about twice a week. And the reason I say this thing about kind of vitamin D is actually in the UK we don't get a lot of sun, so we don't get a lot of vitamin D from the sun, and even when the sun is there, it's not always giving you vitamin D, which people don't realise. And I learned something when I was on one of my workshops, is that if you're out in the sun and you look at your shadow, if your shadow is longer than you are or taller than you are, then you're not getting vitamin D. Even if you're standing in the sun and you've got your shirt off, if your shadow is longer than you, then it means you're not getting any vitamin D. So if it's the same height as you or shorter, that means you're getting your vitamin D. So that is something worth considering, that actually there's only a small portion of the year when we can actually get kind of vitamin D from sunlight, and that's obviously usually kind of like midsummer. So in like the spring and autumn times like that, even if you're out in the sun, you're not necessarily getting the vitamin D. Obviously, yeah, it's still healthy for you to be out in the sun and things like that sometimes, but you're not necessarily getting that vitamin D. So we really, as a kind of nation, need to be incorporating vitamin D into our diet as much as we can, and find other ways to do that. So oily fish twice a week. So I have salmon and tuna and things like that. So if you can do that, great. If you don't really like fish, or you don't eat fish, you just have to kind of play with it and find other ways to get into your diet. I've mentioned sort of like dairy products, things like that. They're quite good sources of vitamin D. Obviously orange juice and things like that. We don't have to get loads of orange juice because obviously that's got a lot of sugar in too. So just play with it, see what works for you, but do try and get some vitamin D into your diet. Multivitamins, as I mentioned, fail safe. You don't need them. If you're getting the right diet, you don't need to be taking multivitamins, but use them as a fail safe if you need to. Don't neglect your good fats. This is a real big takeaway from today. You do need good fats into your diet. Don't cut out all fats. Try and get rid of the bad fats, but try and keep some good fats in there. Okay, you may cut out cheese, that's fine, but if you do want to have a bit of cheese like sprinkled on your bolognese or whatever, or have a bit of halloumi, make sure it's like full fat. Same with your butter, don't be getting like 100% less fat, and your yogurt 100% less fat. Go for Year Valley, go for Lurpak, something like that, and just making sure you're getting a little bit of good fat into your daily diet. And that's obviously the same with milk as well. You don't want to be going for skim milk, try and go for semi-skim milk. So yeah, so that's something to consider. If you want a bit of sugar in your diet on top of fruit, you're not getting anywhere else. As I mentioned, honey is a good alternative because it's kind of like a natural source. I wouldn't advocate having loads and loads of honey, but obviously it's there if you need it. Protein shakes aren't necessarily needed, but you can have them if you need that kind of extra protein boost. But there are other options, other alternatives out there, as I mentioned, like with the tin tuna and things like that. That's what I do. And energy drinks, they're not a must. You can live without them, you can make do without them, and you can make your own. And as I've shown you, it's very simple, just orange juice, water and a little bit of salt, and you've got a perfect and very adequate energy drink there. So they're my kind of main tips from today. Hopefully you find them useful. Some of them you may be looking at now actually thinking, oh, that does make sense, or I kind of knew that already, because some of it is common sense. But there is a few takeaways from there that, you know, are sort of eye openers a little bit, sort of like the good fats and things like that, and the vitamin D sort of element with the fish and things like that. So yeah, if you can take anything away from today, that you know, that's great. I hope you can, and you know, hopefully I've not just waffled on and you've not learnt anything. But there is lots to consider with diet. But I think the main thing, as I mentioned at the beginning, is that actually it's trial and error. Everyone's different. We don't have the same physiology. We don't have the same taste. And you've got to, at the end of the day, getting a good diet, the buck stops with you. So it's down to you to make sure, yes, you can talk to a nutritionist, yes, you can get that advice, you can get that help. There's no problem with that. But at the end of the day, it's down to you to make sure you're getting a good diet, and just knowing what you're putting in your body and what you're not putting in, and taking it from there. So have a little play, come up with your own diets, come up with your own plans, see what you come up with. Let me know what you come up with. I'd love to know if you try the energy drink and things like that. I think that's quite exciting. But just play with it. So that's it from me in terms of the kind of the presentation. So thank you very much for joining me. As I said, I'm Ross Connor from Connor Coaching. If you need any help with training plans or any advice when it comes to running, please do visit my website, connorcoaching.net. I'm also on Facebook and all the social media, so do get in touch. So that's coming to the end of the presentation. I'll just try and come back onto screen now, so hopefully you can see me again and not my lovely slideshow. But you know, I'm here now. I'm available. If you've got kind of any sort of questions regarding the presentation and hear what you've got to say, to kind of ask to you. But it looks like the stream up. What I will in, and you have any questions, please do post a comment, or I'll do the best advice that I can back, or if I can, you're into really good nutritionists. So and I'll do it for tonight. Really enjoy my weeks with a few this back. So as I work out, if you missed that, out. So I'm a coach. I will get.